Hello, my name is Steve Goodwin, and this is my anchor test video number 119. Today we'll look at this Vulcan 9 kilogram. It did come out at 21 pounds on my scale, and in the setting position, the tip came out at 7 pounds for a tip to total weight ratio of 33%. Now, those that have been following my other videos know that I have been testing a 55-pound Vulcan, and I've been lumping it in with my 45-pound range anchors. And it was a little bit of an odd fit, a little too big. But now I no longer have that anchor. The man who owned it and we decided to sell it, and we split the proceeds of that anchor. That was very generous of that man, by the way. In any event, I chipped in my portion along with some extra dough and just bought brand new this new Vulcan. So for the first time, we can compare a Vulcan anchor to the correct sized competing anchors. Now, in most of my videos, I like to conduct sort of a seat-of-the-pants engineering analysis, mainly on anchor shanks. They tend to bend frequently, but this anchor is a bit of a challenge. The manufacturers have scooped out the sides of the shank a bit, and it makes guesstimating or ballparking a strength very, very difficult. I'll just say, though, that the shank is not excessively long. There is plenty of width to the part that hasn't been scooped out. And most importantly, you'll see during my testing, even that real radical 3.5 knot reset test, nothing bent on the anchor. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that's a strong anchor. The fluke is a no-brainer. We've got lots of height. That's all solid steel. I don't see any part of the fluke that would be likely to bend. And of course, we can see the fillet or the weld between the fluke and the shank is very generous. That's never going to let go. So all around, it's a beefy anchor. As I say, it's all steel in the fluke, so we've got no lead, dissimilar metal issues going on. Certainly, someday if this anchor did rust, it would be a trivial matter to get it regalvanized. It's certainly a lifetime permanent type anchor. The chain attach hole will not quite accommodate a 7/16 shackle. The boss will go through, but the bow part does bind up. But that's a little bit generous. It would be unlikely anyone would need to use a 7/16 shackle. A more likely 3/8 shackle does fit fine, does not bind, and even a 1/4-inch shackle will fit through. So likely shackles will fit no problem. Okay, let's get to those underwater shots and see how the anchor performed. Okay, first tests are the 180-degree reset tests in the sandy mud. The first 10 I did were with the short chain rode, only 12 feet of chain, 3.5 to 1 scope, so it's really short, really brutal. And as we can see, the anchor set immediately initially, but then on the reset it took a bit of a drag, but it did always reset. I'm not going to show you each and every one of these, but a number of them were longer like this. And in fact, the anchor really wasn't able to reset much above 3 knots. It was down in the 2 knot ranges when things would start to bite in. And what I think is happening is there's so little chain and there's no catenary at the higher speed. Just the anchor is not positioned at the correct attitude to get a bite. You might be able to conclude that this anchor's short scope setting might be a little less than similar anchors in this size range. There were several, like the Excels and the Viking. They were a bit more reliable at this extremely short resetting. However, this Vulcan always did reset. It never fouled. There's quite a bit of weeds around at this time of year, and it didn't pick up a bunch of weeds, so it was completely reliable throughout all 10 of those resets. Did come up with quite a bit of mud. In fact, in this seabed, the anchor always had mud attached, but it really didn't seem to affect its ability to reset. Next, I did another 10 resets, this time with longer chain, 80 feet of chain, and longer scope, 5 to 1. And the difference was night and day. Under this situation, the boat speed could remain really high, up around 3.5 knots. The bursts of power could be much bigger. And as you saw there, the anchor doesn't move very far at all. It just rotates and brings everything to a quick stop. Okay, those were good resets. A few of them were longer, but held good full bursts of power and could reset above 3 knots. Next is the veer test in the sandy mud. We still have the long chain, still 5-to-1 scope. Not going to see much underwater, so I won't show a lot of that, but it did set right away, and it did execute the full 180 degrees of veer with no motion detectable from the top side there on the GPS, so it's a real good veer. After the veer, I straightened out the thrust and just ramped it up to full, and the anchor was, you could feel it. It was sort of jerking or moving intermittently. Here's a couple shots of the underwater portion. You can see it's not going far. It goes a couple feet, then it would stop, then it would do this, repeat that. But the important thing is the anchor never released. It always stayed engaged. Okay, that was a good veer and a good straight line pull at the end. Cobblestone straight line pull. Okay, for all these cobblestone pulling checks, I use enough scope to ensure that the chain does not lift at the anchor, which is ideal. And this anchor does quite well for this seabed. Keep in mind that no anchor can really produce fantastic holding power here, but among the 20-pound anchors, only one other held more than the Vulcan. The Vulcan did 165 pounds, and I believe the Excel number 2, yeah, it could do 180 pounds, so just a little bit better. And for those that haven't seen any of my cobblestone testing previously, this seabed is normally quite clear with the pictures, and it has cobblestones up to about grapefruit size and is quite consistent. Okay, we had 2 solid 1400 RPM holds and 2 1600 RPM holds. It's good. It is the Vulcan 9 kilogram Scow Bay 5-to-1 scope, so it's 25 water, 125 rode. It'll be a veer test with a baseline of 315. Crew member number 1. Crew member number 2. Oh yeah. Crew member number 3. And 315 pounds solid. I'm going to start the veer. Okay, there's the 90-degree mark. So far, so good. That arc on the GPS looks very smooth. Okay, that's the end of the veer. I'm going to go ahead and ramp up power and see what we can get in a straight line. That's 465 pounds. Holding. That's 535 pounds, and we're moving and release. Okay, it was solid at 465, and again, not long after 535, anchor released. It's good for a 20-pound range anchor. See if we can get a reset out of the anchor. Okay, we're only at 1400 and we got a 1-knot boat speed. Okay, there's 0 GPS speed. .9 knots, 1 knot. it's 1100 RPM and 0. Okay, so it's holding at 1100 RPM. There's 1400 RPM. Quarter of a knot. 0.3, 0.34, 0.35, 0.38, 0.4 knots straight ahead. There's 1200 RPM. Boat speed's decaying. Okay, there, it just stopped. And here's 1400 RPM again. Holding. Nope, quarter of a knot. 0.3, 0.4. So it's repeating, it's very steady. We've got steady drags. Not resetting. Okay, it's the Vulcan 9 clean sand veer long chain 5-to-1 scope 30-foot water 150 rode. As stated, this is the clean, loose sand seabed, and this is really about the only place we get to see much. Nice clear water out here, lots of current. That initial set was just perfect, and the anchor dove right out of sight. In fact, that's the last we're going to see of it. This anchor remains perfectly engaged throughout this 180-degree veer at 535 pounds of thrust. We do have the camera speed rolling at 8 times, so we can get through this more quickly. And we'll notice as the boat veers to port this time, this anchor does not move far at all. It's not the best, but it's real close. It's certainly as good as you could possibly wish for. And yeah, 180 degrees of veer, just great. And then I'm ramping up power. It held the full boat thrust, had a continuous, very small bit of motion. So it's about 1,325 pounds toward the end there, and just did great. Okay, that was a good veer and a nice solid max RPM straight line pull. Got 5,200 out of the engine. Here's a look at the 20-pound ranking chart. We'll see the Vulcan there in light green was, well, total average, second best. Got a 3.9. Only the Excel number 2 was better with a 4. If we look in those in-water tested performance columns, we will notice that there is no number 5s. So this anchor was best in not a single category. However, there's no number 1s or 2s either. So there's something to be said for being good and very good at everything and not being poor or fair at anything. So that's a pretty good strategy. To the right there, we see in those columns, we see some 3s and 5s, all totaled up again. 3.9, only that Excel number 2 was better with a 4. Well, I think it's clear that in terms of my testing, the Rockna company has a real winner here with their Vulcan anchor. Those that have seen my other tests will know that the roll bar Rocknas have a real problem in my sandy mud seabed. It tends to grab a hold of a big wad of mud after it sets and affects its resetting, veering, and ultimate holding power. The Vulcan doesn't really have those problems. I'll say that Rockna roll bar, it does have better performance in the soft mud, and that's pretty typical. In general, the roll bar, thin fluked anchors do better there in that soft mud, and then generally the non-roll bar, thick fluked anchors tend to do a little better in the sandy mud. But as we saw in that performance chart, across the board, the Vulcan is a very strong performer. Okay, that's all I got for this week. Be sure and tune in next week because things are going to get pretty interesting with the big anchors. What's happened is I've finished the soft mud veer tests with all the 45-pounders, and I've finally got a chance to plug in all the numbers into that column. I've also added another column to my ranking chart, and that is sort of a setting quality, and that's again for the soft mud. And then while I was doing all this, I sort of had a chance to sort of tune up my soft mud holding power numbers for those 44-pound anchors. So what it means though is that there's going to be a bit of a shakeup in the ranking of those 45-pound range anchors. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks to everybody who is watching, contributing their expertise, any materials, and especially their donated money. If you want to join in on that money donation thing, there's links to Patreon and PayPal down in the description below. And as always, I hope you all have a good time out on the water and anchor safely. We'll see you next time.